Hello, Grady Hendrix. Welcome to Get Lit Book Club.
Oh.
Here, I brought my fancy camera so you can actually see the room. Please, I hope you don't get sick.
An unseen rabble. Hey, hello, Mom.
Hello, everybody. Okay, now let's see if I can put this back. I'm so sorry if that is going to make anybody watching this live stream a little bit ill. Here we go. So thank you for joining us. This is not your first time with us, but it's been a few years since you've joined us for Get Lit Book Club. So thank you for coming back. You're a crowd favorite always. And this book was no different. We had an abbreviated conversation. I know we have a hard stop. I'm setting my own timer for 40 minutes. So that will even give us a little bit of wiggle.
Perfect.
Great. So we have some really thoughtful questions for our wonderful book club members here. But for right now, I would just love to hear from you what inspired you to write this book.
Now, this is haunted house or witchcraft? Sorry.
You've just written something. Witchcraft.
Witchcraft. Oh, yeah. So, probably, I don't know, I was in my 20s, and it turned out that 2 women in my family had been sent away when they were teenagers, and no one knew about it till they were very late in their lives, probably in their 70s. And one of them reunited with her kid and the other never did. And I spent a long time thinking about that. I mean, even their own siblings didn't know they'd been sent away or had extra children out there. And that's pretty horrible. To be a mother and not know if your child is dead or alive or sick or well or hates you or is trying to get in touch with you and needs you. It's not normal. It's not natural. And I wound up reading a book by Ann Fessler that I really recommend. It's sort of the only book written about the maternity homes that's a popular history. It's called The Girls Who Went Away. And it's an oral history of the homes. And it's told in the voices of the women who were sent away. And on the one hand, it's a pretty amazing book. It's a heartbreaker. And on the other hand, I am a greedy scavenger. And so I read it and thought, oh, this would be a really great place to set a story. Because you've got these homes that are hidden, full of girls who are pregnant, who are away from home. They don't know anyone. They're not allowed to use their real name. They're not allowed to know the real names of the people around them. And they are trapped with each other. And it took me years after that to sort of figure that I was kind of ready to dive into that. And then it took me a long time to write this book. I can usually write a book in about a year. This took me about 2 years, and there were 14 drafts. 2 of those drafts, and those are major drafts. Those just aren't minor revisions. Like ones where the book changed significantly. And I think the first 2 of those drafts didn't have witches in them at all. So it was a long time coming.
Ooh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing also that this comes from a personal connection, and it's as a longtime reader of yours, it's also really nice to know that because it is such a sensitive subject, and so I feel like it came through in the writing that you treated it with care. That was very evident.
Thanks.
Treated with care. The research was really evident. I remember emailing with you about while you were still working on this, and you're telling me like the research you were doing at the time, and it was just like, anyways, good job, it worked.
Thanks.
Sorry, and I can't figure out how to get rid of this guy. Hold on, sorry. Let's see if I can. There we go. Here we are. That's better. Yes. So, but we've had several people here this evening share their own stories with us that are very similar to the stories of the girls in the book. So this isn't a question that we sent you ahead of time or a question that we got from the crowd, but I'm curious, in doing press for the book and hearing from readers, are there any stories that have surprised you that people have brought to you because, and like they felt comfortable sharing with you because they read your book?
A lot of people have shared stories with me, adoption stories, things like that. And yeah, they're pretty intense. I'm reluctant to sort of share them because they were told to me in
Oh, of course not. I'm
private.
sorry. Yes,
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
no, of course. But one thing that really was startling to me writing this book is how much we hate pregnant single women. It's been going on for a long time. I mean, you see a bunch of quotes at the beginning of the book, but that's sort of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it goes all, Ann Landers ran just a lifelong crusade, sort of belittling and mocking any child of adoption or unwed mother who put their child up for adoption, whoever dared to write into her. There was one woman I remember in the 60s who wrote to Ann Landers to say, look, we're not women who hate, we're mothers. We don't hate our children. These were hard decisions we made. I have, what was it she said? I've cried myself to sleep every night since I gave up my daughter, but it was the right thing to do. And Ann Landers' reply was, if you're so neurotic you cried yourself to sleep every night, then clearly you're not fit to be a mother. Thank God that child isn't being raised in your care. And that was published nationally in a syndicated column. I was finding quotes from people right up to today about kids getting pregnant for their self-esteem, about kids getting pregnant because they think it'll get them a free ride, out of control teens, all this. Most of these kids are raped or abused, or they have no access to contraception, or they don't know what contraception is or how it works. There's not a lot of 14-year-olds out there, despite the urban legends that a friend of a friend told you is 100% true, who choose to get pregnant and carry a child to term. But I've got someone I'm very, very close to who we couldn't be more further apart in our politics, our religion, anything. They're very, very right wing, very strong in their faith, but they are a family lawyer who specializes in adoption. And they've told me that there's not a month that goes by when they are not dealing with parents who are hiding a teenage daughter, claiming she has mono, sending her away and out of town because they're pregnant. And, it still goes on to this day. And to this person, they feel like, even though they are very strongly anti-abortion, their feeling is, the fetal heartbeat law in South Carolina is a disaster, because what they always used to tell clients who came in is, slow down. Like, you are in no hurry. There is no urgency. We've got time to think through everything. Maybe adoption's the best thing. Maybe keeping the kids the best thing. Maybe termination is the best thing. But we've got time to sit and calmly talk about this. Your parents don't have to be here yelling at you. We can just figure it out. And now there's no more time. And, they said that most of their clients are opting for termination these days because there's no time and no margin for error anymore. So, and a funny thing, I just want to throw this in because this is sort of something I haven't really talked about much. As much as the stuff with pregnancy and unwed mothers and everything still goes on, it was only 2 years ago that about 200 accused witches were sent to prison in Afghanistan. Today, there are 20,000 kids in Kinshasa who are homeless because they're accused of being witches. In the Suharto regime, in the 90s, people estimate about 500 to 600 people accused of being witches were hacked to death in the streets. Women are still lynched for being witches to this day around the world. So, witch hunts, like literal witch hunts, not just, oh, it's a witch hunt, my name's witch hunts that end in lynchings. And this thing with unwed mothers still goes on. And I find it so disturbing, to be honest. And now I've managed to ruin the tone for your dinner. I apologize.
I mean, the last book that we discussed had incest. So,
There you go.
Our bar for books we can discuss over dinner. It's rough. Like we can handle anything.
Fair enough.
We have. This is not a weak group. So many thoughts on that. Just very briefly, that you said it is still amazing how much people hate single pregnant women. And oh my Lord, how true that be. I remember so keenly when I got married how wearing a wedding ring I became invisible and I loved it. I just loved it. I all of a sudden got way less attention from men, and it was great. I could move through the world and just like exist. And then I got pregnant and my hands swelled up and I had to take my rings off, and then all of a sudden I was very visible and haven't. I feel very privileged to be in a position where, you know, I was married. Their derision, what they thought they were, you know, directing at me was completely unwarranted, even though it would be unwarranted in any situation. But
Sure.
just that, you know, to have that taste of it, and I think you captured that fear and that reluctant shame, this shame that you just like you can't help but hold on to, but want to get out of you as much as possible. I think that really, really came through in Fern especially, but Holly too. Like, oh my God, just what a harrowing but strong girl. I loved how you know, you spend the first half of the book thinking Holly is so simple, but in fact she's just trying to preserve herself in the only way a 14-year-old girl could possibly know how to.
Yeah, sure.
So, kudos to that. Okay, we're at 7:42. I want to ask a few questions from our audience that we haven't covered yet. One, I'm going to pivot a little bit it's still about this book, but it is perhaps going to be a fun conversation, I think, maybe, or it could be darker, I don't know. Why didn't you kill off any of the characters?
Yeah, so killing people in horror, you wind up in an arms race. Like if you kill someone horribly and memorably early, well, then you got to up it, right? And so you wind up in this arms race to sort of exterminate more and more characters in more and more Baroque ways. And so one of the things I want to do in my books is get people very invested in the characters. So sometimes they start a little more slowly before the horror kind of appears, because I want people getting involved with the people in it so that when things happen to them, they have an impact. I've got a lot of people who've said to me, you know, oh, How to Sell a Haunted House is like, oh, that book terrorized me. It's so horrifying. And I'm like, you know, and when they did the film adaptation of it, or I worked on the film adaptation of it, which hasn't come out yet, the producers were appalled to discover that no one dies in that book except the parents at the beginning. Like, sorry, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it, but like literally no one dies. And when they sort of fired me off the project, which is fine, I'm a big boy, that's what happens. I work with the producers and the director, I write drafts of the script. Eventually as a screenwriter, you get fired off a project and they bring on another writer. It's just sort of the way it goes. It was because they wanted to bring on someone who would add murders. Yeah, I just kind of feel like my life is pretty horrifying, and rarely do people get murdered awfully. So, you know, and it's funny, you know, real life horror is kind of hard because I was talking to some kids in a high school once, and I was saying, you know, I mean, you guys all have these very curated versions of, I mean, everyone does this sort of curated version of yourself. And sometimes that involves some gnarly details. Oh yeah, my mom like beats me, or, you know, my dad's an alcoholic. But, you know, give someone your phone unlocked and let them have it for 2 hours. And you saw these kids recoil in absolute terror, because that kind of uncurated exposure, I think for all of us, is really horrific. Like just really appalling, more so than, you know, having your head chewed off by rats. So I try to keep it more real because I don't want to get into that arm race. And I also think that's just more real, where there's real unexplored horror.
I agree, and I'm having flashes to when at my first job, and I pulled up my iCloud account, and photos came up, and I was 24, and there were some certain kinds of photos up there, and I was at my job. So yeah, no one needs unfettered access to my shit. Thank you very much. That's horrifying.
And also, just to add in really quickly, I had the end of this book was really hard, and my editor and I really got into it. Like, really, it was bad, and we spent about several months really fighting over the ending. And
what were you arguing for that you were arguing against?
There were a lot of things, but one of the things was she wanted Fern to kill the witch. And I was like, dude, I am not laying a murder on this character. I'm not laying a murder on a 14, 15-year-old kid. I'm just not doing that. That's so immoral to me as a writer, even though she's not real. I just could not do it. And we fought over it. Maybe she was right. I don't know.
Well, but also she was dying, so like.
Right.
What? Okay.
I mean, my editor was pretty bloodthirsty. I think because oftentimes people default to that, right? It's got to end with someone dying. I was like, no, I'm not going to kill any of these characters you're naming.
I'm very glad you brought up the ending, especially because that was one of the things that was commented on, that to have an ending that resolves is not common, I think, in a lot of contemporary fiction. But an ending in a horror book that resolves and is also satisfying is like, it just doesn't happen, and it was very. I don't think if you told me that I was going to read a Grady Hendrix book and have warm fuzzy feelings at the end, I would say you're a liar. I will have great feelings. I'll be very invigorated. Actually, that's not true. I had super warm fuzzies after reading My Best Friend's Exorcism. That's not, yeah. And actually, I take it back. You end in warm fuzzies always.
I like warm fuzzies.
You do.
Well,
it was like the book club too. Like that's, yeah. Anyways, so you're just a big old softie who likes some weird shit, which we love very much. Sorry, I got totally lost what I was reading about there. Okay, I have two more questions from our group, and then we can kind of open it up a little bit. But which one of your books would you like to write a sequel to?
None of them really. I'm just not sequel-minded. I kind of feel like the story ends where it ends. Although I've been working on a TV version with some people for Southern Book Club. And one of the most fun conversations we had is there was a period with television where everyone was like, this period is past, don't worry. Where a few years ago, though, people were like, well, what's season 2? And I came up with this idea that I'd love to do, but as a show, which is basically, the daughter, Corey, goes to college and meets another vampire. So there's things I'd like to do in a different format, but as a pure book, books are hard. There's a lot of words in them, and they take a really long time to write. And I don't know if I want to go back to any of them. Like, I don't reread them. Like, I just sort of like a horribly emotionally repressed shark. I just keep moving forward.
I feel so bad about the first email I ever sent you then. Talking about a very specific passage in one of your books. I'm so sorry. Did you read it?
No worries.
Okay, great. And now I'm going to read a very thoughtful but verbose question, but I want to ask it because we haven't touched on this at all. I think it's a very good question. This is about Miriam and Hagar. Were Miriam and Hagar intentionally written as within the trope of the magical Negro, kind of cementing it, that their knowledge and power didn't seem to be utilized to benefit them, but they are released to help the white protagonist?
Yeah. So Miriam and Hagar, I really wanted to make sure they're in the book for a couple of reasons. One is that I think one thing that people really don't understand and simplify and turn into a caricature is the relationship between Black people and white people in the South. And I especially think between Black domestic workers and the white people who often employ them. I'm thinking home health care attendants, child care providers, even cleaners and housekeepers. I think those relationships are really complicated by class and money and capitalism and race and all these things, but there are genuine relationships there. And I wanted people in that house who offered these girls some hope. And Miriam and Hagar are completely vital to that home. It would not exist without them. And they're also the only people who, for all their faults, treat these girls like adults who are, capable of handling information about what's going to happen to them. And they're the only people who help the girls. And yes, I'm very aware of the magical Negro trope, 100%. And I didn't want them to be magical in that sense of they help everyone but themselves, but I wanted them to be one. I wanted Hagar especially to be the one person, and Miriam, I guess, who really did something helpful for these girls, so that not every adult in the book was just a horrible piece of shit. And I sort of thought the only people who could do that would be people who were sort of, to some extent, as diminished as these girls were in the eyes of Mrs. Wellwood. To her, these girls aren't real people. Hagar and Miriam are not. They are real people, but they're also not to her. And so I thought Miriam and Hagar occupied this sort of neither here nor there. They were adults, but they weren't always given the same power as adults. They had freedom that the girls didn't have, but not entirely. And there was actually a thing that came up with the book that never made it into it. But when I was doing the research for it, St. Augustine and Jacksonville in particular, about 10 years before this book takes place, were real hotbeds for the civil rights movement. I mean, horrible, horrible stuff happened down there. And Miriam and Hagar were part of it. And I don't remember his name, and I got to apologize. But it's been a while since I've looked at my notes for this book. But the police chief who comes to the home was a real person who was a notorious Klansman, and was a pretty hideous human being in St. Augustine. And it's believed he disappeared some Black citizens. And I sort of wanted to use his presence and his arrival as a tipping point for Miriam and Hagar when they start actually helping the girls or seeing them somewhat differently, not just the witchcraft, but the fact of what it's attracting. And some of that stuff just never made it into the book. So I get what the point is, and it's definitely well taken. I was aware of it. I tried to step around it and treat it with respect and carefully. To some people, I may not have, and I fully get it. I've definitely, in Southern Book Club, Mrs. Green, who's the home healthcare worker, I've definitely gotten some criticism for that. And I'll take my lumps,
It's a hard thing to, a hard line to walk, especially with the time that you set it in. If there weren't Black characters in your book in this specific time, in this specific setting, I don't think it would have run very true.
Right.
And it shows, and it gave, for better or worse, gave different opportunities, especially for us to see Miss Wellwood. The moment when she tells Hagar, Hagar's at her house trying to take care of her and help her, and she says, "Don't get too comfortable."
Right.
Don't pretend to be too familiar. It's shut the fuck up, woman. She's trying to save your life, and you cannot that. And that's such a telling thing. And like you said, it's not going to be. It's not a pretty part of history.
Right.
It's not going to read pretty. But I think it added a richness to the book, I think.
Well, and also just to throw this out there, Carol Dabney, who's Zinnia, is the other Black character in the book. And I mean, Carol speaks French. Her mom is in the Lynx. Her dad's Boule. She grew up in the Jack and Jills and is DC Black society. And I wanted to make sure she was in the book as well, because as much as Ann Fessler's The Girls Who Went Away is a really terrific book about the maternity homes, there's a more academic book called Wake Up Little Susie that's about Black maternity homes and the Black maternity home experience. And there simply weren't as many Black maternity homes for a variety of reasons, but there were some integrated homes. And I wanted this to be one because I didn't want the issue of these kids being pregnant and being treated so horribly to be solely a white middle class issue. I also wanted it to be an upper class issue, an upper middle class issue, and a black issue as well. I wanted it to sort of be colorblind to some extent. So, and I got to say, writing Zinnia was so much fun because she's right. She's just right about everything all the way down the line. She's like, don't screw with witchcraft. Don't be an asshole. Everything you're doing is a mistake. Like, Fern is actually wrong throughout. She's just well-intentioned. And Zinnia is the one who saves Holly's life at the end, not Fern. Zinnia or Carol is really right. And it's really fun to write characters who are right and no one listens to them. And so she was a blast to write.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed her, and I enjoyed she brought such an interesting tension to the dynamic with Holly as well, because she was coarse but also truly cared about Holly, or not coarse, but she was pragmatic, very pragmatic, which is not, but like precocious, I guess is a good way to put it. I think she was precocious. In a very good way. Okay, so those were our group questions that we got to. I did want to tell you about our menu that we're eating because it is inspired by the book, and the kitchen did such a fun job with it. So our first course is called calves liver and milk. That is not what we were eating. It was a delicious watermelon and tomato gazpacho. So very much taking some liberties with the ideas of calves liver and milk. The second course is called Chicken Hearts and Gravy. I have not had the opportunity to have it, but it's chicken succotash with jasmine rice, sea island red peas, corn, sweet peppers, zucchini, and squash. The third, this is what I really want to tell you about. Our third is it just says DS. If you know, you know. So we've got our dessert for our DS. Our what is it? Dietary supplements? Yes.
Dietary supplements, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're eating tonight. It's very good. Okay.
The food was fun to write. I'm from a family with a Southern mother who is an enemy of the kitchen. So bad food is always enjoyable to write.
Did you eat a lot of salt or no salt while writing this book?
Probably too much. It was a hot, sweaty summer up here when I was writing a lot of it.
I was telling somebody earlier, I just wanted to be eating potato. Like every time they mentioned what they could eat, I was like, I need a bag of Lay's. I just need some potato chips right now to stuff in my mouth. Okay, so we're at 8:00. You have your hard out at 8:15.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask, very hopeful. I mean, I don't know if it'll be brief or quick, but what are you working on right now?
I am just wrapping up my next book. It's a first draft, but I'm pretty confident it's not going to be as laborious as Witchcraft. Although when my editor reads it, they may decide it's crap. But hopefully I'll be done on September 4th and turning it into my editor. And there's not a single woman in the book, weirdly. Which I did not anticipate. Yeah, I don't want to say what it's about, but I realized as I was halfway through, I was like, oh, it's still set in South Carolina, although it's in Greenville this time.
Okay. I feel like that gives us enough. Do we get a decade?
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm back in the 80s because I had to write about something I knew. So yes, it's 1986.
Yeah, I feel like we can, as a group, spend the rest of the meal deducing what it is. We'll try and figure out what it is.
Well, I gotta say, it was really fun to write. It's really fun to write boys. I feel like a lot of agony is always spent worrying about little boys. Like I was a 12 and 13-year-old kid, and I'm writing about 12 and 13 and 14-year-old boys. And people were so worried. We were in trouble all the time. We're all fine. We all wound up fine.
Well, because it's like the opposite of your girls in Witchcraft. Little boys are given all the latitude and have none of the brain cells. Just like little girls don't have the brain cells. Like they're all just human noodles running around making silly decisions. But the boys are just they get to do it more, and so they get in more trouble. So yeah. I do understand why that would be fun to write about.
Yeah, they're all knuckleheads, you know, but I like them.
But I'm sure there's sweet. Some of them at least. Okay, final question. What was the last thing you read or watched that you just can't stop thinking about and would like to tell us about?
Oh, geez. Actually, yeah. So I'm actually I just reread, I don't know if people there know Blackwater by Michael McDowell. Does anyone know Blackwater by Michael McDowell?
Anybody? We have murmurs and maybe.
Okay, so Michael McDowell was a gay Southern writer. And I only say he's gay because he died of AIDS in 91 or 92. But he's most famous for writing the screenplay for Beetlejuice and The Nightmare Before Christmas. But he was a horror novelist. He always published in paperback. So he was, on those drugstore spinner racks. And he is, I think, one of the great Southern writers. I mean, just as a writer, period, full stop. His stuff's amazing. If you want to see some of his work, he lived in Medford, Massachusetts, most of his adult life, but he grew up in Alabama. And he really captures. I've got a lot of relatives from up around Greenville, Spartanburg, that part. And I feel like that part of the South, edging into northern Georgia, over towards Alabama and stuff, it's sort of its own thing. And his writing, it sounds like my cousin's. And if you want to see what he's about, there's a book he has. He went out of print for years, but a company called Valancourt brought one of his books, The Elementals, back into print, which is a really great horror novel, but it's also a great book about a family. But he wrote this series of books called Blackwater in 1982. There's 6 of them. And they've been reissued by Valancourt in a really unattractive single-bound edition that's like this thick. But it originally came out as 6 very slender, I think they're like 200 pages each, paperbacks in the early 80s, 82 or 83. And it was one a month for 6 months. And it's the story about this family in Alabama. It starts in 1912. And their oldest son marries a underwater river monster. And then you just follow the family up through the early 70s. And it is, I think, one of the greatest books ever written. And it really just fell off the radar. And Valancourt's edition did okay. It's out there. If you want to read it, you can get it from the library or something. It's just a big honking edition. It's not the most pleasant read physically. But I was on book tour last summer in 2024, and I was in Barcelona, and I saw this book in Catalan, and I was like, what the hell? Is that the first volume of Michael McDowell's Blackwater? And it had a really gorgeous cover. I wish I had a copy of it to show you guys. It's really beautiful. And they're like, oh, yeah. And then I went to this big horror, science fiction, fantasy bookstore in Barcelona, and the books were everywhere. They had merch. They had tote bags for Blackwater, pencils. They had these standing displays. And I looked at, bookstores, indie bookstores will put like, the top 10 selling books in the store. 6 of them were Blackwater books. And I was actually just back there in July of this year. All 6 Blackwater books were still in their top 10. The Blackwater books got reissued in this separate edition that was, each one was in its own volume with a really gorgeous cover. And between Germany, France, Italy, and Spain, they've sold a little over 2 million copies in a year. I don't sell 2 million copies of anything. These are books with no advertising, with no publicity push. The author's been dead since 1991, and they came out in the 80s. And they have become this huge sensation all over Europe. So a UK publisher just bought the rights to this package, and I think they'll probably be reissued there, but you can order them for the States. But even then, Valancourt has it. It's just not as pretty. But Blackwater is really amazing. It's I've described it as sort of the 100 Years of Solitude of horror paperback originals for the South. And it really is the story of how the South became modern. I mean, it starts in 1912 when the South was pretty much a wrecked economy. A lot of the farmlands had gone to seed. It was pretty devastated still from, Civil War, Reconstruction, all that. And it was a mess. And the book ends in the early 70s when Jimmy Carter's going to go to the White House eventually, when the South is a manufacturing powerhouse, when everything's turned around. And it's the story of how that happened. And there's two families at the center of it, the Caskies, who are white, and the Sapps, who are black, who work for them. And it is an astonishing, astonishing book. And I often get laughs from people when I say, oh, he marries an underwater river monster. But, river gods and goddesses and monsters basically are in every culture. I mean, Japanese people have the kappa. In England, there's the Lady of the Lake who gives King Arthur his sword. They're the Rhine maidens in Wagner's Ring. There's water dryads and nymphs in Greek mythology. Sort of these spirits of rivers and water as women are everywhere. And it's just an amazing book. Yeah, sorry, I went on about it way too much, but that's really, yeah.
No, I love hearing that, and also I feel the way you describe this book, it feels like how people told me reading Faulkner would be, and that is not their experience of reading Faulkner. This sounds way more enjoyable. I do
it's a lot of fun.
But oh my god, not now. Awesome, thank you so much, Grady. It's 8:07. Letting you go.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I've got to get to a friend's book launch event. So thank you.
Oh, congratulations, and please, go be safe. Love the green, by the way.
Thanks.
The green backdrop looks great. And thank you. Oh wait, let me give you. Everybody can say bye. Just really quick.
And I just want to say, did you cut me off, or people still hear me?
No.
Oh, yeah. No, I just want to say thank you, guys. I really appreciate y'all doing my book fair book club. You only get 12 books a year, and it's no small thing that one of them's mine. So I really do appreciate it. I think that's it. It sounds corny, but I actually think that's, I don't know, it means something to me. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. We are very grateful that you remember us, even though you're in the big time. And we're here holding it down in the low country for you.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Hi, Grady. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, and now we just end the live stream. There we go. End stream. Bye-bye.